microphones here, if you would, please.
Yep. While you're thinking about it, I'm going to pass out this draft letter correcting the record of the e-board meeting.
And this letter is still in draft form, and what, you want us each to review it and get back to you within, what, a day or two?
It's already been heavily edited for tone and content.
Okay.
But if you have suggestions or issues or concerns, you can get those back to me by Wednesday.
Wednesday, okay.
It's a short little letter with a very simple concept of the Aurora Airport. So.
Fairly long history to that, which is causing that to be a little bigger than it would otherwise be, I guess.
So yeah, if you could get back your comments to myself or Mark Ottenod by Wednesday, we would like to get this out Thursday if possible.
All right. Any councilor concerns? Councilor Starr.
I know the chief's here tonight, so just what's going on with what happened in Memorial Park over the weekend. And I think, number one, that we ask him to come so we can talk about it. And then number two, just getting the information out to people, that, especially that live in that neighborhood, because there's a lot of concerns that I've been getting calls with. And then some kind of plan moving forward. So I'm glad that he's here tonight.
All right, so
we can do that. We can do that now, or we can do it in the public meeting. I asked Mike and Chief to both be here at both times, but if you want to knock it out now, I'm sure that they have other things to do with the rest of their evening.
Well, I guess the only question would be, would there be better exposure to the public if we did it downstairs? And there may be citizens coming to the meeting that are expressing concerns, and having the discussion after that would be.
Okay, so much for your evening plans. We'll see you at 7. Thank you.
All right, I think all the council shares that concern and has had, various inputs. I know I have also, and we need to address it seriously, so we'll do that.
All right.
Anything else? Yes, if you would not mind, Nancy.
minutes today, too.
Here it is.
It is? Test, test.
but to go forward before 2022 with the other frog ponds, if those start moving, and then, we will have done, huge amount of our foreseeable housing is built without it. And then it comes in 2022 and everything's built. So we've kind of missed the curve.
How difficult is it to retrofit something like that?
It can be difficult. Depends on the service size. In some cases, you may require an upsize in the service from a 200 amp, which is typically what's put in a new home, to a 400 amp.
So you're basically relying on public charging stations then?
One of the things...
Well, we put one in.
Yeah.
But she put one in. A lot of people have put them in. There's a lot of people in the community with electric cars. They're not relying on going down to a parking lot. It's plugged in every day.
How much was it?
John did that.
Okay.
And we hooked it up to solar panels at the same time. So
it seems like it's around 400 or around 450 or something like that.
I think some of it's going to depend on what tax incentives are provided as well. I know there's a number of those that are out there for people to grab onto.
But it should be significantly less at the time of new construction.
Yes.
And eventually it'll be, as I said before, it'll be like putting in a laundry room without a 220 for the dryer. Who would do that? Because that'd be very expensive to add that later compared to what it's cost to do it when you build the house.
most of the new construction now has options where you, even if the houses are started, they're being sold before they're even close to being finished. Polygon's a good example. Lennar and Arbor also, and they have a list, like a menu of things that you can pick, and that's one of the things that you can pick. And in fact, in a lot of the higher end homes now, they're just putting them in because they aren't that expensive to do now. But you can.
The only they can market.
Yeah, the only time that you won't get it is, and it's become very rare in this market, for a house to be completely finished and still unsold. I mean, so yeah. So now it's a menu item.
It's something that has to go back all the way to the panel, and with a dedicated thing, and usually ends up going through walls and stuff. So.
Mine was right next to the panel.
Yeah.
I got lucky.
That's good. We have a basement.
So we have a policy still that we are not charging building permits for solar installations on houses, is that right?
I don't know, is that right, Dan?
I'm not aware of that policy. There are fees for solar permits.
I think you should check, because I think that we made a decision not to charge for those at some point, and I don't know if that was a limited duration decision. Or we ought to know if that's in effect. I also would like to know if, in fact...
I would like to know, too, because I was not under that impression.
Would like to know what this is that I've read about other cities having the authority to implement the charging earlier than the statewide mandate. And so I don't know what that is, but we ought to be able to find out.
We can research it.
Yeah, we can.
I hadn't heard of it, but we can research it.
All right. Anything else? Thanks very much.
Did you know any other community other than Portland that was making that suggestion?
Seems to me maybe Eugene.
Eugene? Okay.
But I'm not sure.
I'd just like to say real quickly before they leave, I really appreciate legal going through our code. I think this is the third time you've tweaked and found, just errors in our code, really even minor ones, but it's good to have things like these dates, these quarterly dates that were off. I appreciate that, because you're doing that in-depth reading, and it's not easy to catch all that stuff. And I appreciate that we're cleaning things up and getting things right, so that even in terms of how payments are made, it's correct. And I know that's time-consuming and it's kind of boring, and I appreciate you guys doing that.
There's a lot. There's a lot to do.
There is a lot to do.
We could hire one attorney for the next 2 years to go through our code.
I believe that, and you just have to plod through it.
Yeah, Dan and I actually had a conversation. We weren't sure if we were going to bring it up or not, but both Shelley Marcotte is the staff member that, with regard to the payroll tax, who collects that, and obviously Dan's responsible for the building code, and both of them had said that they would actually like when we have a little bit more capacity to do a more holistic look at both those sections, because there are improvements that can be made, definitely. So, and we've got Chapter 11 that will be coming up here shortly.
That'll be a good
So,
one.
Another
yeah,
one.
so there's a lot coming down the pike, so I appreciate that.
Things change, yeah, and it's kind of dry reading, but it's important because you have to pay attention to every sentence.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Charbonneau Utility Repairs.
Mr. Palmer and Weigel.
Good evening again. I just wanted to quickly introduce our newest civil engineer, Matt Palmer. He started back in July and recently passed his professional engineering exam. So, he can use a stamp now. Matt and I actually worked together in a previous life, so we're excited to have him on the team. So, thank you.
Very good. Welcome. Where'd you come from?
Tualatin.
Tualatin.
I work with Zach in Milwaukee.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right. So where are we on Charbonneau?
Let's see. So before you tonight on the consent agenda, we have a resolution for award of a professional service agreement for design and construction services for the next round of utility repairs in Charbonneau, which is French Prairie Drive Phase 2 and Old Farm Road Phase 1. As you likely recall, the council adopted Charbonneau Consolidated Improvement Plan back in August 2014. Since that time, there's been 3 high priority spot repair projects in 2016, 17, and 18. In the plan, there's 38 complete repair projects identified, and French Prairie Drive Phase 2 and Phase 1 are the first 2 of those complete repair projects. We solicited 4 qualified firms on August 6th, and we received 2 proposals on August 29th. Wallace Engineering was determined to be the most qualified consultant to perform this work. If you have any questions, I can answer them for you.
Council, any questions?
2 good maps in your packet attached to the scope of work.
Under resolution number what?
2707.
They're loaded on they kind of lay out the scope of the projects.
Consent agenda A, resolution 2707.
Yes, sir.
2707. Okay, consent. There we go.
They'll be in there. The maps.
Right here.
Once I know where to look, I can look in here.
Here we go.
I can't tell by looking at this.
They're there.
Yeah, there we go.
So that's the location. So both of these projects are directly adjacent to each other. The first phase, which is French Prairie Drive Phase 2, is along French Prairie Drive here on the north. And this will occur, construction will be 2019, and then in 2020, we'll be working down in this area.
What's the difference between green and brown?
Green is sewer.
Green is sewer, okay.
And
Zoom out for you.
I think brown, yellow is storm, or orange. Is that orange?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. And then
Green
red
is sanitary.
Red is streets, and blue is water.
Well, streets isn't shown here, but for all future projects in the Charbonneau area, all the streets are going to be resurfaced.
Yeah, the maps in the packet don't match what you have on the screen.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So in looking at these and trying to understand them, it appears that what is sewer suddenly becomes storm and then goes for a ways as storm and then becomes sewer again, and that probably is not what that really is portraying.
There's a lot of information on these maps that's hard to convey in one map.
Yeah. I think the map in your packet does a better job of laying out what the improvements are.
But the question still exists because it shows segments of green turning to orange and then turning back to green without...
I think they're on top of each other.
Yeah, they're just layered.
They're just right next to each other.
Yeah.
So they're both passing all the way through?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not that you're not doing that section of sewer, for instance?
Well, for example, on French Prairie Drive there, the missing section of green.
Yeah.
in the consolidated plan, it was shown not to be replaced. What we're going to be doing during design is we're going to take a look at that line again. If it shows that we need to replace it, we will likely replace it. But if we find no difference from when the plan looked at it to now, we won't be replacing it because there was no deficiencies found that shows it needs to be replaced.
So you looked at it section by section?
Correct.
Okay. Councilor Stevens.
So on Honor Loop, down towards the bottom right there, that's that new development?
Correct.
So is that storm drainage tying into that storm drainage that's on where those new houses are being built? Right there? Yes.
This line here, this is actually an inlet from a portion of the golf course. So this line does not continue down the south bed.
Oh, does it? It terminates there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this picks up flow from the golf course and flows into the system here and then to the north.
Oh, is there a catch basin there?
Yeah,
Okay.
in the golf course area.
Yeah, you can kind of see that new subdivision in that loop off of Arbor Glen.
Arbor Lake Drive?
Arbor Lake, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Where are you pointing now for those of us that don't know all those streets by heart?
Right here, on our loop is a new subdivision that was just constructed.
On the driving range?
43.
Yeah, okay.
The one thing I would comment to is to make sure you communicate with the homeowners around that area as extensively as you can. I can't emphasize that enough.
So they know it's going to be dug up
They know
before
it's
you
gonna
dig
be
it
dug
up, right?
And how long it's going to take and all those kinds of things and how they can get to their homes and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, we'll be going to the neighborhood in early 2019 to do a public open house to discuss the project and take any comments from them about construction.
Perfect. Thanks.
All right, I think we're good. Thank you very much. Smart is the last piece of business on the listing. Rider surveys.
We saved the best for last, but I don't know yet. I'm just kidding.
Always.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Yes, the shortest. Yes, absolutely. I'm Dwight Brashear.
That's not a very high bar, though. That Prezi bar.
I'm Dwight Brashear, the transit director for SMART, and joining me this evening is the highly capable Nicole Hendricks. She's our transit management analyst. And, as I was thinking about our presentation, I thought back to my days in college where I was studying Peter Drucker, and Peter Drucker, who is pretty much the founder of modern management, had a number of quotes, but one of my favorite quotes was, if you can't measure it, or if you don't measure it, you can't manage it. So with that in mind, we try to, at least this particular survey is an annual survey, and we're looking at making some tweaks to it, but in any event, we want to know what our riders are feeling, and so that we can make the necessary adjustments and improvements. So we are, in keeping with Peter Drucker, we are trying to measure it so that we can manage it. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nicole, who will take you through a really brief presentation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. A little bit about the survey. So this is our second annual rider survey. The first one was last year in August. We made a new change to this year that it's in September. From the feedback last year, folks were saying that we might get more youth responses and people on a more normal schedule than in a summer month. So we made that change just to see what would happen. And it was mid-September on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a Saturday, which were the same days as the August survey. We collected 456 surveys, which was 7 more than last year. So huzzah. It's an increase, but it's not a whole lot. But I think I recently went to a surveying workshop, and the gal teaching the class said that 400 good good sample size, so I'm just glad that we passed that 400 threshold. And all runs and routes were covered, so that's our express routes and our in-town routes and our new Charbonneau shuttle and the Villebois shuttles. Some adjustments from last year. We did have a little bit of feedback. We provided an online option. We didn't really advertise this until the week of because we really wanted that organic people on the bus so that they remember like how they got to their trip, that kind of thing, instead of reflecting on a previous trip. So if someone denied the survey on the bus, we would provide them with a link to say, hey, if you want to take this later, then this is an option. And we received about 30 online responses. So definitely think we should keep that option for next time. We also had, we requested bilingual associates this year, attempts to survey folks because we have a couple routes that were more Spanish speaking. So we just wanted to provide that option and make people feel more comfortable when they were approached. Also, there was at the end of the survey, which is in your packet, there was an option for an email address to get results or just updates. And we ended up including a phone number too for people who don't have access to email or just have a phone. And then we changed some words so that it was just a little more inclusive. For example, we had the question about gender, and the one from last year had an other kind of section, and the word other is a little it makes you feel like an outsider. So we changed that, and we just had a blank line for people to put what they are. And then the last thing is a comment box just to have people provide any kind of feedback towards Smart Service that they felt like they wanted to include. Demographics, I'm going to breeze through these a little more because for the most part, all of these results are extremely similar from last year. Majority of our riders are middle-aged. We're growing a little bit in that 18 to 29 section. And surprisingly, I was hoping to see that under 18, that 9% go up because of schools back in session. A lot of kids ride Route 4, but they don't really want to take the survey. And so we didn't really see an increase in the amount of under 18, even though I know that amount's higher. So in terms of gender, a little over half are male, and then 46% female, and 1% non-binary. Ethnic background, about 57% are white, Caucasian, and then the second largest is Latino or Hispanic with 20%. Switching over to car ownership, there's been a lot of transit studies lately that show car ownership is directly tied to your likelihood to use public transportation. So the less cars you own, the more likely you're going to ride public transit. And you can see here a lot of our riders have no vehicle or one vehicle. So
I'm just surprised.
Yeah.
So many own 4 or more.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a little.
A couple of kids.
I was a little curious. But I did ask, the way the question is phrased is how many cars like per household. So I'm wondering if people misinterpret it who live in bigger, like in Villebois, there's like the mental facilities, or I don't know. I do wonder about that, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of cars.
71% of our riders live in a household with 3 people or less. So people who ride transit tend to be in the smaller households. Annual income, this is where we saw the biggest change from last year in terms of just responses. And the shift is that the under 10,000 actually got lower by 6%, and the over 89,000 increased by 6%. So we had more people taking the survey who made over 89,000 a year, which, yeah, was the biggest change in response. And
your age demographic was stable.
Yeah, and I think with the over 89,000, that tends to be the 1X route and the 2X. They tend to have a higher income. which is 1X is Salem, sorry, 2X is to Tualatin and Barber. Travel trends. So primary purpose for taking SMART is going home, going to work, or shopping, mainly in Wilsonville. And if public transit was not an option, a lot of people would walk because a lot of our service is in town, or they would drive alone. They seem to have that option available to them. So it's nice to hear that they're choosing transit over driving alone. And I did add a response this year, which was Uber and Lyft, and that got a large portion too, which was 13%. And as always, I think last year it was also 18% said they wouldn't make the trip if they didn't have transit. Destinations, primarily Wilsonville, 13% Salem, and another 13% to Portland or Canby, or transfers to TriMet or Chariots. How often do you take the SMART bus? This one, 80% about of our riders are regular or daily riders, which makes sense as to why the responses are so similar from last year, is that we're basically serving the same people because they take the bus every day. So that makes sense, and we're learning because this is our second time. So, and then just a comparison from last year, the reasons for riding remain the same. People, vehicle ownership really matters. They feel like they're saving money. It's convenient for them, and it's less stressful than driving their car. I'm tying the recent National Citizen Survey in with these results because I think these are important just for the narrative. Some of the strengths that we saw out of that survey was we ranked, our bus service ranked 5th out of 238 other city responses that had a similar question, which is pretty impressive. And then as ease of travel was 10 out of 214. There's some room for improvement in terms of people actually trying transit. We were ranked 74th out of 195, so really trying to figure out how to encourage people to take the bus or just give it a chance. And then compared to other city services, like the library scored really well and parks scored really well, and we just want to score that well. So we're going to work on that.
83% for transit is remarkable.
Yeah, but still. Anyways, so overall, we ranked higher than national benchmark for service, but we can still improve on citizen awareness and just utilization of the service. And then just some conclusions. So as I said earlier, we had a high percentage of frequent riders. So the results from year to year are likely going to be extremely similar. I mean, when I was going through each one of these, they're within 5 percentage points of each other. I mean, it was so small. I was like, am I looking at the right year? And yeah, it's just that similar. So the information, we use it to help communicate and better plan, and then for advertising. Something that we kind of discussed internally is maybe because the results are so similar is to do a satisfaction survey every other year. So in one year do this rider survey, and then the next year do a different, more service-based satisfaction survey about how people like our bus stops. Do they feel like our buses are clean? Do they like our service? Just to make sure that they're enjoying, not just their demographics or their travel trends. And we don't want to do 2 surveys a year just because we don't want people to have survey fatigue if they are the same riders. And then lastly, with the passage of House Bill 2017, I know we've been here a lot for that, it's going to be important to track how projects are doing and satisfaction with that. So I think this is one way to do that. And that is it. Do you have any questions or comments?
Council, anything?
I really like that.
The wave, the Prezi.
Goes in and out.
It's very attractive.
I'm glad you like it.
This is the Prezi, right?
Yeah.
That was that
Prezi.
first slide that you had up there, that something comparing it to PowerPoint.
Yeah, I think it's more interactive. Some people get a little sick from it, so I try to not move around too much, but yeah, it's pretty. priority.
I know from talking to the city of Milwaukee that they are getting an inundation of the electric scooters, and they have people using them increasingly, and they have companies that are coming in and wanting to offer those services. Do you think that's coming this way, and would that affect ridership?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Mr. Mayor. We had a meeting just today with Lime. They brought a electric bike over, tried to get me to ride it, but my mama didn't raise a fool, and I kept my foot on terra firma. But we are looking at that, and that was one of my concerns. Well, two concerns, and Chris joined us, and Zach was there as well. And the concern that I think Chris and I share was they just leave the bikes wherever they leave them.
They're dockless.
Yeah, they're dockless, and so you can find bikes. Well, he said there were scooters. They only have scooters in Portland. They were finding them in the Willamette River and other places like that, and so we had some concerns about.
So they're amphibious?
No.
They don't float.
But they were finding there. He said it was a very small percentage, but and they were trying to get notoriety on YouTube and things like that when they destroy these things. So we are certainly looking at it, and that was part of the other concern was how it would impact our ridership, and I certainly don't want to do anything that would detract from what we're trying, our primary mission. And so the team and I are going to, discuss all of those options. But yeah, he was here today, and the downside for us, I think a city the size of Wilsonville, is that Lime at least would require a subsidy, at least for the first year or better, to get business, established, and so they expect to do a certain amount of business, and they think with Wilsonville, they're not certain how much use they would get.
Density.
Yes.
So were you talking about Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or Milwaukee, Oregon?
Oregon.
Oh, because in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, that's been a real issue of them being, and the business owners don't like them because they just get left in front of their doorways, and then they go out to try to open up the next morning, and there's all this sort of debris.
A lot of cities are pushing back.
Yeah, really, there's been a problem.
Like I said, Chris was the first one to kind of, as the presentation wrapped up, that was the thing that Chris brought up, and certainly I agree.
Well, there's at least arguably some merit in letting some other places sort out the methodologies and the pros and cons and how to deal with it. You don't have to be the very first one in.
And the problem with the scooters and the bikes, they sound really good until about mid-November through May.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's really not going to be much of a market. The good thing you guys have going for you is that your wheels are covered.
Absolutely. Well, he said he did allude to that they had some special top secret all-weather something coming out, he said. So I can only assume it's a bicycle with an umbrella. I don't know what it is. Yeah, but that's not anything new, I don't think so.
All right, any other questions?
Well, I just wanted to make the comment that seeing the 28% plus for I drive alone if I couldn't take the bus, which means fewer cars on our road. And if nothing else, I mean, there's so many good attributes about having SMART here, but, with our traffic issues, that's just one that's so important to us. And people can hop on the bus and get to the library or wherever they need to go and keep one less car on the road. That's a real plus. So, and that number hopefully will climb.
It's actually more than 28% though, because you would wrap in the Uber Lyft, because those are other cars.
Right, that would be on the road.
That's true.
And then it was 13%, even in Wilsonville.
And then there was 19% that wouldn't have an option.
That would not.
And that's really the one
and that other
we need to
piece.
focus on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
I thought your idea about doing, kind of taking the temperature
Oh, satisfaction survey, yeah.
I thought that was a
Instead
good
of doing
idea.
it. Okay,
'Cause
that's good.
Alternate year.
How much
Yeah.
resources is going to be going into these projects? And,
Right.
having some sort of instrument and mechanism to keep track of the reaction to them.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
that's a good idea.
Yeah, and I think ODOT is expecting agencies like ours to go to Salem, after HB 2017 has been in place for about a year and tell our story. And hopefully, through our surveying, we'll be able to tell a very positive story.
Mr. Drucker would be proud. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, anything else before we break before the meeting? Mr. Cosgrove, anything?
No, are you going to want, perhaps maybe have Rob and Mike come up during not public comment, but public presentations, maybe after Mr. Dirksen? We can have that discussion instead of waiting till city manager's comment or legal business at the end. I think it'd be good to get it off the top of the meeting while people are still there.
Mayor's business is right after citizens' input, so maybe I should ask them to come forward on the mayor's business, if that can work for you guys. Okay.
And I just want to state that there's certain things that Rob can't talk about because it's an ongoing investigation. So we're prepared to talk about what he can talk about, and then we can also talk about some of the improvements that we could, that we will be looking at with Memorial Park.
Yeah, my perception is clearly the community is calling for something to happen that hasn't been happening. I mean,
sure, and we can talk
do
about
something more, something better, something more effective, something. I mean, so really
Absolutely.
hope to hear some specifics, I guess.
Well, I have some specifics that we'll wait till 7:15 to talk about.
I think it's maybe better as a response to this.
I would do it during mayor's business, because if anybody is there to talk about it during public comment, maybe after they hear, they won't feel the need to come up and speak.
Well, that's the question, is do it before citizen or after citizen?
Because the mayor's business is after citizen. I was thinking if you moved it after Dirksen, then they might get their questions answered before they.
Yeah, I would do it before public comment.
I was thinking about as a response to any input that we got, which would be after citizens.
Yeah, and then we'll know full well here in about 25 minutes how much public interest there is there.
We can always respond. My sister goes home tomorrow.